official welcome to today's webinar, which is going to be all about how to select the right CDP for your business. My name is Kalina. I'm the brand and com manager here at 42, and I'm very happy to welcome everybody here today, and of course our speakers. Hi Thomas, hi Anthony.
Hi Kalina, good afternoon.
We are all loud and clear. Everybody can hear each other. It's so good. Nice. Great.
Hopefully, yeah.
Well, with this, I think we can just go straight into the session because we have lots to cover. It's going to be a very informative webinar. You guys are going to see lots of slides with lots of information just because we really wanted to make it really concrete, specific, and useful. And of course, we're going to send the presentation afterwards. So let's dive in. We're going to start with a bit of introduction. For those who don't know us yet, today we have two of our industry experts, and I'm very happy that they had the time because we're really happy with having their expertise in-house. Thomas, for those who don't know you, you are the founder of Relay 42. And for the past, what is it now, more than 12, 13 years since founding Relay, you've been helping huge global brands such as KLM, Air France, Heineken, Levi's in navigating this complex world of CDPs. And we have Anthony, who's our head of marketing, but also a very experienced MarTech and CDP expert, and also member of the advisory board of the CDP Institute. So thank you guys for joining. Welcome, Thomas. Welcome, Anthony. So yeah, with every webinar, we just need to get some of those technical bits out of the way. For everybody who's not familiar with the platform, we are on Demio, our webinar platform. So you're going to see us in the presentation at all times on your left-hand side. And then on the right, you're going to see the chat. For privacy reasons, we've kept the chat private. So feel free to ask your questions there in the chat. We're going to see them and we're going to address them at the end of the session. This session is going to be a discussion between us, between Thomas and Anthony, and also with you. So we're going to have a few polls, starting with, let me just show you how the poll functionality works. It's probably the best, right? So let's start with the first poll of the day, just to test how things are going. So I think, well, A, this webinar is going to be awesome. Let's go. Or B, my boss made me attend, so I'll be secretly attending emails. Feel free to be really honest here. It's just to warm up and to see if you guys see the presentation. Nice. I think we already have a couple of people answering, saying that they're very excited to be here. So that's great. All right.
Am I answer that my boss made me attend?
Yeah. Let's be honest, you know, I think we all know the webinars, but yeah, this is going to be something that I think we all would like to also rewatch because I think it's going to be a very, very nice discussion. All right, let's get to the serious part. So what are we talking about today? So today is really about CDPs, and it's a huge topic. We know that there are more than 100 solutions on the market right now, so it could be very challenging, confusing, you know, to really understand how they work. In this session, we're going to focus on one particular type of CDP, the Campaign CDPs. But we're going to start with a little introduction. So to give us a little bit of a context on the CDP landscape, I'd like to invite Anthony to kick off the webinar with a bit of context on those technologies. Anthony, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Kalina, and welcome everyone today. So, as you pointed out, Kalina, there are many customer data platforms available for businesses to choose from. And you know what? It is confusing because actually, when you start to look at CDPs, you start to find out that they've actually got as many differences as they do similarities. So I thought a good place to start today to talk about the four main types of customer data platform. But before I do that, just to really establish the capabilities that we refer to as core CDP capabilities that every CDP has, which is to connect to systems within the business that hold data about your customers, ingest that data, unify that data into customer profiles, single customer profiles, store that data, and all the changes that are happening, because that's really important as well. And then connect and activate that data to business systems that need it, or marketing channels. So any CDP should be able to tick those boxes. However, it's what I've referred to as the ancillary capabilities, or the additional capabilities. And that's really where the differences start to compound. It could be marketing automation functionality, could be modeling and analytics, could be omnichannel orchestration, personalization, tag management. I could spend the entire webinar listing different capabilities, but and this is really what we're hoping to do today, is to try and work out why they're so different, and sort of help you delve into that if you are looking to invest in a CDP. So using the CDP Institute's own definitions, the 4 different types are data CDPs. So data CDPs, these provide that core functionality, so to connect, ingest, unify, and activate. Activate to things like your email platform, or perhaps send an audience to Facebook, trigger something in a CRM, whatever that is. The whole idea is that you unify that data and then be able to make use of it. The one thing I would say with data CDPs is that they do commonly require some knowledge of coding. They're popular with IT and engineering departments. And really are there to sort of decrease data bottlenecks, or where IT is trying to support marketing, with unique complexities that we all know are related to customer data. They're trying to support marketing, and really create efficiencies. Then you have what was referred to as analytic CDPs, and the clue is in the name, really, with these, is that yes, they fulfill those core capabilities we've talked about, but specific functionality for analyzing data, crunching data, building models, multi-department customer insights. Everything is around the analytics element with those. You then have referred to as delivery CDPs, and again, maybe there's a clue in the name. Again, they're all about delivering messages and offers to customers, and actually, you'll find that they have maybe 3 or 4 embedded channels, maybe email, mobile app push, SMS, maybe some website personalization. But for me, I like to refer to these as like the evolution of marketing automation. This could include marketing clouds as well as multi-channel marketing hubs. If you start to look at Gartner's definitions of technologies, really these are great for synchronizing those channels I just talked about. So in terms of evolution of your business in marketing, being able to have 4 channels synchronized in one workflow, is actually a pretty beautiful thing. What I would say is that it's still built on that premise of building a segment or a list or an audience, and then providing a sort of multi-channel experience through those embedded channels. And the 4th one we have is Campaign CDPs. There is some overlap between Campaign CDPs and delivery CDPs. Granted, they are both about activating into marketing channels, and delivering customer experience across many channels. I think an important distinction in Campaign CDPs, though, is that you will not find embedded channels within them. They're what we refer to as agnostic or channel agnostic. So if you have multiple marketing tools within your business already, it's about providing those with a richer set of data, which you can then, within those execution channels, then deliver much better personalization, etc. Thomas, I don't know if you want to add a bit of weight to that.
I think one observation on this model, which obviously not ours, but the CDP Institute's, is that also on the left-hand side, the technologies tend to be built more for IT departments or data science departments. So these are more sort of technical solutions, especially on the data CDP side, you're often writing queries in technical languages. Analytics obviously built more for data scientists, whereas the right-hand side is much more for the business user. And I think it's good to realize when you're selecting this kind of technology, who in your organization is actually going to use this, and who is it made for? Because it's not even a right or a wrong kind of thing. The right-hand side has a more business user-friendly UI, but it also means that you tend to have more defined capabilities. Whereas in a data CDP, you can break out the Python code and write anything that you want as an IT user, right? So it's really different tools for different audiences, and good to realize who in the organization is going to use this day to day when you're selecting the kind of solution.
Cool. So do we have another poll, Kalina?
Yes, we have another poll because we're going to be diving deeper into the category of campaign CDPs. So we have one more poll for you guys. And the question is, how well do you know campaign CDPs? We have 4 options. A, I've never heard of them. It's possible. B, I know the basic, but that's it. C, I am familiar, but I've never worked with a campaign CDP. Or D, I've worked or I am working with a campaign CDP. So this is just to see, again, to what extent we live and breathe the CDP world. We're quite familiar, but it's always good to know where people are. And I already see that, yeah, most people have heard about them, and just very few have worked with a campaign CDP. Okay, that's great. So we have people from the whole spectrum. From 33% I've heard about them. 27 I'm familiar but never worked with one. Okay, that's very, very insightful to know, because as we said, it's going to be a lot of information. So hopefully after this session, everybody will be at least on level C. Let's put it that way. Great.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice breakdown of answers there. We've got some top tips at the end. Some for seasoned campaign CDP professionals, and some for those who are just starting out. So stay with us for that. And just a reminder, if you do have questions, please keep putting those in the chat. So on screen now is, I'm not going to read it out to you, but this is the CDP Institute definition of a campaign CDP. And so you can have a read of that, but I really did want to kind of make sure that I do a little plug for David Raab, who's the founder of the CDP Institute. It's cdpinstitute.org if you want to go check out the website. But they've got tons of great resources, for creating CDP use cases. I think they've got 50 plus, maybe more, that you can just download and reuse for yourselves. An RFP generator, loads of stuff. So, anyone who has never heard about a campaign CDP, go there. Let me just click to the next slide. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that CDPs have as many differences as they do similarities. And actually, if you start to then just look into the campaign CDP bucket, which is where we're going to be focused on now for the rest of the webinar, there's really a whole plethora of different types of CDPs within there itself. And it's all based on where they've actually come from as an original technology category. So the CDP market has actually been multiple technologies that have all sort of converged into one, and especially so within campaign CDPs. All have those core capabilities that I've mentioned a couple of times already, but where they come from is where they're going to be strongest, right? So a website personalization tool, that's going to enable you to ingest many data sources, but it's going to be very good at personalizing the website. These are website personalization tools that thought, hey, rather than just let's personalize based on the last session or a couple of sessions of clickstream behavior, let's bring in the full transactional history of everything that customer's ever done and personalize even further. So it's a great use case, but it means very, very strong at website personalization, perhaps not so much at others. You've got first-party DMPs, very strong at being able to activate anonymous profiles on your website, for example. We know 90% of everyone who hits our website is anonymous. If you want to activate those, in advertising, first-party DMPs are very strong at that as well. ABM, very good at B2B display advertising. They all meet the definition of a campaign CDP, but are inherently different due to the technologies that they sit on and the use cases that they were originally built to solve.
Thanks, Anthony.
Okay.
That was a very good, just basic overview, very comprehensive, starting on all different CDPs. And now we're going to go a little bit deeper into campaign CDPs, because as you already showed, it's really important to know where the different CDPs come from. It's kind of the fundamentals to start with, and to really understand what's under the hood. And as we're going a little bit deeper into the technology, I think, Thomas, I think you can tell us a little bit more about the technology, right? So what's under the hood of CDPs, and also taking us a little bit back into where they come from. And I think a lot of what's coming is going to be very familiar to a lot of marketers here today.
Yeah, and I'll try not to make it into a history lesson, right? But we wanted to take a little bit of a step back on how did we get here? Where did the CDP market evolve from? And that was also triggered a bit by a client I spoke to a couple of weeks ago who said, sure, all this CDP stuff is interesting, but I've been doing this for 30 years. And already at least 30 years ago, we were talking about achieving the same kind of thing, but with CRM and marketing databases. And I realized he had a great point, right? The technology underneath has evolved, but marketing tried to do these things for a long time already. You're getting the right message to your customer, being relevant in the right moment, being personalized is not a new ambition for organizations. It's just that the world of technology got more advanced and at the same time more complex, leading to more choices. But if you look at the sort of traditional view, what a lot of companies did was create most called it a marketing database, or some very trendy called it a single customer view, but and some just call this the CRM data warehouse, or whatever name you picked, right? But started to build systems in which you centralize part of that customer data. And if you take the simple definition of a CDP, that kind of system almost already fits the definition. The difference being that the CDP Institute has CDPs are packaged software, and these tended to be sort of hand-built in-house creations by companies themselves. But they would take data out of typically the old channels, stores, email, mobile apps, all kinds of transactions coming in, and load them into a normal database somewhere in the company, often used initially for reporting, creating dashboards, seeing how many orders are there, and then realizing that this could be used for marketing and creating segments out of this. In the very early times, you would create a segment and send physical mail or flyers to these segments, or later on you would use them to send emails, or you create a list for people to call in your call center. And all of that kind of approach is not that different from what CDPs are still trying to do, but the capabilities are a lot simpler and smaller, right? And I think, Anthony, if you give it one click, what we saw happening with these kind of systems is that that view is quite static, and the data are also quite simple customer records, right, coming from a CRM origin. So as an example, you would have the customer's name, address, and last products purchased in that system, and it would be updated or refreshed once a day. We've seen once a week. I've seen a case where this came out of physical stores, where they literally drove the data set on a USB drive at the end of the week from every store and loaded it into the data set. So this is old style technology, but still relevant today because it's for the same perspective of what you're trying to do in a CDP. The downside you see with that kind of hourly refresh is that, of course, you will never really get to the point where you can be very personalized and very relevant to your customer, because you're always sort of lagging behind the reality. And I think it's also this kind of technology that sort of sparked the founding story of Relay42, because, Anthony, if you can give it one click, what happened now indeed nearly 12 years ago, as Kalina said in the introduction, was my background is in technology and in databases and big data. Before we started Relay, Koen, our co-founder, and myself, we were looking at this world of marketing databases and we saw a lot of very irrelevant messages. And jokingly, we always use ING Bank. They've been a good sport about it as the example, because these guys were trying to sell us a mortgage while we were both straight out of university and without a job. So this was really not a good case for them. And our thought was, how can they be so wrong, right? They have these databases, they have these systems, they know where you use your cards, they know where your mobile app is, even 12 years ago, and yet they weren't using it well. And the realization we had at the start of building Relay 42 as a campaign CDP was more of a what if kind of thought. What if you can get all that data connected? But how if you can do that more real time? Make sure that you also get the app, the websites in, the behavioral data. So what if you can make that same concept and idea that everybody has been trying for years on end, but at a much more granular scale, much more detailed, and much more real time and up to date, and then apply algorithms to figure out what to do with that data, because you're then generating a lot more data. How personalized could you be? And that was sort of the guiding start at the start of Relay 42. And it has driven a lot of decisions on how we've actually built the platform. And that's why we're sharing it today, because these are very relevant topics to think about and consider. Just like you have to consider who is going to use a CDP product that you're buying, it's good to consider, how was this made? Where did it come from? Has this been a web personalization solution before? Or is this CDP coming from an email background? Or is it an evolution of that sort of old, I think Anthony used the beautiful word, hand-cranked SQL database to describe such a thing in his history. And if you give it one click, what we saw is that around that time a lot of technology exploded, right? And don't worry, don't take you through all of these, but there are a lot of technical choices to be made in the CDP space on how is this thing built. Has it evolved from an email platform on a SQL database, and is it still very close to that sort of batch-based kind of approach where you put in pretty structured data, not too crazy volumes? Or has it come from the digital media space, from the YouTubes and the double clicks and then the Google ads of the world? Because that is a very different kind of technology, often much less structured, being able to deal with much more volume. And these two worlds even speak in different ways, right? If you send emails to 10 million customers, you're doing very well. You've done a big campaign. If you've reached 10 million customers with a display ad, you're probably a corner shop bakery, and you've just spent about £5,000 is the rough estimate of what it has cost. So the scale is different by 3 zeros between these kind of technologies. Hence why you need to sort of dig in a little bit on what is this CDP built on, and is it fit for purpose in what I'm trying to do. And our view on that is, obviously working for very large brands with high volumes, is that you really have to think about, how can I make this handle real-time and personal at high volume? And for Relay 42, that meant we went with what we call an event-based architecture. So that is listening and responding immediately, which is a big contrast to that database style setup. But it also means a different kind of product, different specialization. So you have to think about what you're buying and what kind of organization you are, and where you are in that adoption cycle, and at what volumes you're going to do that.
Yeah, and we did have a joke about it yesterday, sort of looking at this, and I did refer to it as a hand crank database. I mean, that's probably doing it a disservice. I think that previous slide, you can get a lot of value out of that, right? If your business is focus on direct channels, and it's going to help, right? Get richer data into your channels and personalize better. I guess the reason for showing that, and the reason to getting here is want to say, look, that there are a lot of campaign CDPs that are still built on that architecture, right? Is that you've got a clone of a database that has to refresh over an hour, sometimes overnight. And so you're always working on customer data that isn't in the moment, or interactions that aren't in the moment. So and that can work for some, but really wanted to show here that with yourself, Thomas, how the choices that every CDP started as probably someone in their bedroom dreaming up an idea, right? Apart from maybe the marketing clouds who've built some CDP capabilities over time. But the technology choices that you choose on the way to launching your customer data platform are really going to dictate how well it can perform for certain use cases. So really wanted to impress that. Whilst doing some research for this webinar, I actually came across a blog on the CDP Institute website. It's from a guy called Darren Rankin, Transparent Partners. I don't know Darren, never met him, but I did reach out on LinkedIn and say, hey, I like this blog. Can I reuse some content? And he said, yeah, go for it. So thank you, Darren, if you're on and listening. But it really struck a chord with the content we're giving you today. He talks about the real-time cake when he talks about CDPs, and that there are 5 levels of real-time capabilities that you must look at. So if you're a business that demands real-time interactions in the moment, which I'd say most businesses do, you need to think about real-time in terms of ingestion, processing, access, the audiences, and the activation. And he basically says, it needs to be constructed correctly in order for real time to actually happen. So ultimately, everything needs to be real time from end to end. Further into his article, he explains how audiences can either be added or removed in milliseconds, or perhaps rebuilt hourly. For direct marketing, an hourly rebuild might be okay, but if you want to suppress someone or many people from, say, an ad audience in real time based on what they've purchased or done, for big advertisers, that can make a huge difference. So, again, it's like really pointing out how, if we think back to the sort of hand-cranked model, I need to stop using that phrase, but yeah, the hand-crank model, it's not going to support real time, right? You might be able to do some real time at the activation layer within your channels, but you still got that overnight or hourly refresh going on. So it's really important to, I guess what we're trying to say here is really important to dig into the A, the origins of where they come from, and B, that underlying architecture and whether that's actually going to support what you need. Because you know what? Once you engage with a vendor, they'll say yes. So it's down to you to actually, do a bit of investigation there.
Anthony, we often get asked, why do I need real time, right? The clients ask this when they're discussing and considering CDPs. And I think that is a pretty valid question, right? Because it's in some businesses, it's a nice to have. If most of what you're doing is email and direct mailings and those kind of things, it's not that important if you have to wait an hour for the things to get sent or whether it's 200 milliseconds, completely fine. But if you're using different kinds of channels like programmatic media, you want to have high performance in. But I've also seen customers connect their CDPs to call center interactions. And obviously, it doesn't work if you give the call center agent the information an hour after they've had the call, right? And we see in our data sets that these interactions tend to be quite close together. And we've probably all seen it as a consumer. You go on the website, you try to find the information, you can't find it, you look up the phone number, you dial it immediately, right? There's a couple of minutes attention span for that customer where you want to interact. So real time in itself is a good thing. Obviously, it doesn't come for free. You need to have an architecture that supports it. But for a business, you need to think about what is the key part for me and when do I need real time, which usually is when you start to do web personalization, call centers, programmatic media, where you have actual immediate interactions with that customer, as opposed to more delivery CDP kind of channels where you're doing email, direct mailing, those kind of interactions where it's less important.
Yeah, and Darren in his blog actually as well, he talks about, I can't remember the brand names exactly, but he's talking about having kind of points. He stayed with a hotel or he's flown with a certain airline. Having points updated in real time. It's like it's not essential, but actually, as consumers, we want to see that, right? It's almost like gamified experiences, and all these little things that can be accomplished with real time, whereas actually if I've got to wait 24 hours, I take a look and I haven't got my points, I'm not going to get my freebie yet, and I'm disappointed. But yeah, so you know, all manner of things that are kind of, you know, customer experience related, or actually, you know, real practical things that you need to do as a business.
Yeah, and I think the travel industry is a good example, right? Because the point is mostly a customer experience kind of thing. I've done something where why does it take so long? But it's also limiting your business in a capability, because if you are able to respond in real time, that also means you can send someone a voucher the moment they walk into the hotel, or when they get to the airport, you can push a message and say, hey, this is relevant to you. So real time is key based on the channels that you have, and it creates more capabilities for you as a business to create messages and moments that will also be a delight in customer experience, because most customers are sadly still used to the old kind of model where things take a couple of days and you receive it later in the mail and it's no longer relevant, you ignore it. So it's also a future way of doing business and talking to your customers, is being more real time, or at least closer to the real time capability.
Okay, so the next exciting bit, we've been working on a framework. I mean, this is a framework that I've worked on in the past for CDP buyers in a previous life. It's a sort of 7-stage maturity model, but sort of adapted to what we're talking about today. And really, you know, it's something quite high level, but something that you can look at and go, yeah, I think I'm there, or I think I'm there, or we need to retrofit a certain stage because we haven't done that right. And really, you know, it's just a sort of initial guide to kind of, you know, go off and start thinking about your use cases. You know, the first 2 stages are really foundational, right? So, you know, what you've got here, you know, what we sort of say is, you know, unified first-party data set is kind of the foundational place that you need to be. You know, creating those unified profiles, or golden records as they get called, you know, and with that, you know, stage 2 is then how do you then sort of use that data to kind of get really reliable insights and facts in your business about your customers. You know, and if you can get there, that is actually a really kind of great place to be, right, Thomas?
And quite rare to get there quickly.
Yeah. Not 12, 18 months. But yeah, you know, so these are you know, you could probably solve these with say a data CDP or analytical CDP, you know, and the use cases here are really around, as I say, getting your first party data, collecting and building and structuring your first party data, and then being able to have some reliable metrics that you know, you haven't got 2 disparate departments coming at the same thing with different answers based on different subsets of data. So, you know, if you can get to that point where then that's really good. And those are kind of like the sort of getting ready stages of marketing, of first party data maturity.
Yeah, and I think these are also the more technical stages, right? That's looking at the model from the CDP Institute all the way at the beginning. The left-hand side, the data CDPs, the analytics CDPs tend to be more technical solutions. These are also more sort of technical or capability focused parts, right? You're not yet communicating with customers. You're really just setting a strong foundation to build the rest of it on top of. And if you look at the next stage in the model, this is where you start to see more differentiation by different types of CDPs that you want to apply, because these are the business use cases. And this is where you have to think about, do I need a delivery CDP that is more focused on the direct channels that they have built-in delivery for, that are the key channels to your business? Or are you looking more of an integrated across these channels kind of approach with a campaign CDP, where you want to cover more of these channels, where you want to combine paid media with your own channels, or your direct channel combinations with paid media? And then you're looking at, how do I interact with my consumer? So this side of it is much more a business decision. Where are your customers and where are your challenges in communicating with that customer? And then deciding on what that means for the kind of CDP technology that you need.
Yeah, and this isn't linear, right? So, I mean, you might look at this and say, hey, actually, we're awesome at paid digital media, but we suck at owned media, you know? It's so this isn't meant to be linear, but like you might, you know, it is useful to kind of look at where you think you sit on this, but It certainly isn't a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 approach. But yeah, these are where this section here is really where most marketeers, digital marketeers, and commercial teams, where their KPIs sit, right? These are where you're consistently trying to drive more efficiency, more value, and more sophistication.
Absolutely.
I guess.
And then as you build on top of them, so basically the first two are very foundational, numbers 3, 4, 5 are very business dependent. And then what we see is that many companies looking for a CDP, speaking to us, asking us questions, are putting, let's say, 80% of their thoughts on the number 7 on this chart, right? How do I get the best AI, deep learning driven, amazing model to drive all this? And then the other 20% tends to be on the lower layers of the model. While what we see is that these parts are a bit sequential, right? That's why we made it a bit of a staircase into sort of numbers 1 and 2. Then you focus where your business needs it on the middle part, but you need to have at least mediocre to good capabilities in both 3, 4, and 5 before you can start to think about omni-channel orchestration. And you have to be quite honest looking at your own organization and your own capabilities and software stack, whether you really are at that point and whether you have solid technologies in place in those areas before you start to think about the omni-channel view to it and before you start to think about predictive analytics. Because if you start to apply very strong algorithmic models, deep learning models to predict customer behavior, but your sort of command of the channels underneath, your orchestration capability is weak, then that perfectly modeled message from your AI model is maybe going to the wrong person or is not delivered in real time. So you know the exact moment you want to have it. Unfortunately, it appears tomorrow. And that is really where sort of that wedding cake analogy from Darren fits in quite well. If the bottom part of the cake is soggy, you don't want to think about what happens when you build all the top parts on it and it's going to go sideways at part of it.
Yeah, and I mean, this looks a bit like a cake itself, right, as well. So there you go. Should have renamed the webinar CDP cakes or something. But yeah, I mean, next best action, right? We all want to be able to like have something that's self-learning and optimizing as we go, and it's choosing the right channels, and it's choosing the right products, and it's choosing the right message, and it's choosing the right whatever. And that we as marketeers are then, able to kind of, optimize and test and do control groups and experiments and all these great things to kind of continue optimizing. But yeah, I think what we look at here is that, you really need to have 1 and 2 as a stable foundation of first party data, optimizing, the different owned and unowned channels. And then omnichannel is just bringing all of that together, right? But trying to, as you said, Thomas, trying to kind of get there too early. You need those solid foundations in place. So, as I said, it's a simple framework, but I think it's when I've tested it on CMOs and marketeers, it's quite a nice sort of thing to kind of look at and start to kind of consider where you want to lean into as a business. Okay, I always like to do webinars with a bit of practical tips and advice. I'd say that for all of those, the 31% who said I've never heard about Campaign CDPs, we've got another 19% who said I know the basics. This is probably, and in fact, A, B, and C. We had a load of people who said I'm familiar but never worked with one. This probably is for you, right? So, here's practical tips of what you could do in 1 day, 1 week, and 1 month. So, in 1 day, start to create an inventory of all the systems and databases in your business that are holding information about your customers. Now, that might be some marketing channel systems, the CRM, but maybe finance systems have some data about your customers. Start to document those, as much information as you can, what state of that data is in, etc. So if you can make an inventory, I think that's a really good first day. to get you started. In a week, I think that's a good amount of time to be able to just document what I call the highly practical use cases. So these tend to focus around data access or lack of data access, or data insights, or any blind spots you have. So it's really about efficiencies or inefficiencies, and I call those highly practical because you can calculate costs against those quite easily, as opposed to aspirational use cases like, I want to be on the channel, next best action driven, right? How do you calculate that? So, this is something that you can do in a week. Document those. If it's our IT team are spending, a couple of days a week trying to get data to the marketing team so that we can make it usable. That is an example of how you could make an efficiency, and you can calculate the how much they get paid and sort of turn that into an actual cost benefit. So those are the practical use cases. And then I think in a month, this is where you can start to think about use cases related to conversion rate optimization, outbound ROI, paid media, those three middle sections in that model that we just showed you. Everything around those that you need as a business and related to your KPIs that you think you can improve, or generate more revenue or whatever. But again, now it's a piece of string. How long is it? These might take 2 weeks or 2 months, but ultimately there's stuff you can do in a short amount of time, a middle amount of time, and a big amount of time. So that's if you're starting
almost
out.
seems like the recipe for cake, to prepare the cake. Step by step plan.
Yeah. And maybe you're further along. So the 25% who've worked with the Campaign CDP, maybe you bought a CDP already, or you're down that path already. This is not a marketing slide that we've created. I've actually borrowed this from our customer success team. Thomas, I think we're running short on time, but this is something I know that you work with day in, day out.
I won't go through all the parts, but indeed this was developed by my team. This is their approach if you already have a CDP in place on how to iterate over different value drivers and different opportunities, because the technology can do so many things with so much data that often clients don't really know where to begin, and that it's hard to prioritize the use cases. So if you are indeed in that 25% that says, I'm familiar with the technology, I'm using this kind of thing, then our way of thinking about it is all about prioritizing those use cases by the business impact that they can have. So by that middle part of the maturity model, and from there driving results across all the channels, measured by impact by consumers. And from there, sort of iteratively, that's the bottom part of this diagram, trying to optimize, and in that way also adding in that orchestration capability across the channels, adding in deep learning models in the places where it has most impact. Because it is nice and shiny to have a lot of deep learning models live, but it's much better for your KPIs and your business if those models are actually in places where the use case has a big impact. And this is the kind of approach we use for that.
Great. And with this, because you guys did already so great, you went through all this content. It was a lot. Again, we're going to share the slides afterwards. But yeah, I'm mindful about the time. We just have time for a couple of questions, which we can address right now. So the first question is, do CDPs have core capabilities to comply with data privacy requirements? Big topic of privacy. Thomas, would you be able to take this one?
Yeah, I saw this pop in, and I was afraid I was going to have to answer it. So I think that is a hotly debated topic, right? What Anthony listed as the core capabilities of a CDP is the minimum definition as set by the CDP Institute, saying if you do this, you can be considered a CDP. That does not include data privacy requirements. On the other hand, I don't think there are many CDPs that would not cover at least part of this. But again, here you see a big impact driven by where did that technology come from. If this CDP comes from the email space or from the campaign CDP side of things, especially with a European vendor, there tends to be a big focus on data privacy, on opt-out, because these are legal requirements in many spaces. If your CDP has an origin in an analytics kind of solution and possibly outside of Europe, then there has not historically been that much drive to cover all the data privacy requirements for different markets. So you really have to check this in a selection process and not accept the simple, sure, this is covered kind of answer, right? Consider some references, consider data storage locations, consider experience in different markets, and origin of the technology when you assess the coverage of data privacy capabilities.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, you know, I mean, privacy is only going one way, right? And really accelerating at the moment. So, you know, the third-party cookies going away, you know, that's going to be pretty massive in Chrome. I think I see a world where, you know, in terms of a customer data platform, is there actually any need to have, say, PII in the system at all? You know, when I mean, it does go back down to those kind of fundamentals of how that CDP came about. But you know, if it's you know, providing, you know, it's centralizing data and then providing that to other systems where in the CRM you have the PII, in the email channel you have email addresses, etc. You know, that in terms of a CDP, I see a world where the CDPs actually don't have to hold any PII at all.
It's a big topic, and we've actually been thinking of organizing a little bit later a webinar on privacy and go deeper into that because it's a huge topic. We have time for 2 more questions, and thanks again everyone for posting those. First one, if you have a siloed system with 2 completely different vendors for front-end analytics and back-end database CRM, which CDPs work best? The front-end vendor has a CDP, and the back-end database vendor also has a CDP. Wow, that's
I was reading along and realizing that we had this exact question before.
And this is the world we're in, right? You know, lots of businesses now have multiple CDPs. You know, it's a very valid question and one that we see a lot. Yeah, I would jokingly say, obviously, pick Relay 42. But if we have to advise on this topic, I think it's a challenge for many organizations because indeed it's either your front end system and back end system both have a CDP, or your email platform evolved into one, or all of that happened, and now you have 3 different ones. What I think still applies is thinking about where is the business benefit for you. Are you trying to solve an analytics problem for a fairly technical or data science kind of department? It's not a strange decision to put in a 3rd or even 4th CDP, because the CDP definition is so broad that these are very different technologies for that analytics solution. If what you're trying to do is thinking about our maturity model, solving those middle layers and creating a better customer experience, creating more performance on your campaigns, on own channels and media channels, then probably both your siloed existing systems are not the right CDP for that, because they come in from a very channel specific kind of viewpoint, and you would have to think about a campaign CDP that sits on top of these. And then obviously you need to be very thorough in assessing how well that new vendor integrates with the existing ones, and whether they are direct competitors not connecting well, or whether these are both modern and open systems where you can plug in the data and create sort of a layer on top of it.
Okay, and I think we have time for 1 more question, and if there's some other questions that we haven't been able to answer, we'll get back to you after the webinar. So 1 more, given changes in attribution and modeling as a result of iOS ATT enforcement, is real-time data ever wholly achievable across channels, including biddable paid media? Now, again, the question about real-time.
about real time and cookieless, or at least the related topic of Apple's tracking prevention options. Maybe before we answer, good to say that we've spent the whole webinar on this topic alone. We can share the link afterwards, because it's an hour of content on this specific topic. And then trying to do that in 1 minute. Yes and no. The privacy restrictions and tracking restrictions in platforms, of course, make it more difficult to capture some kind of data. They don't usually have a big impact on how real-time that data is. And thinking back to that blog post that Darren wrote, real-time has many parts to it. You have the signals coming in, which tend to be real-time, but that is not the whole picture, because if you're getting your input data in real-time, but then you're transferring it to another system once a day, then making decisions and then pushing the output the next day, then you're still not in a real-time kind of conversation or orchestrated experience for your customer. And that is to the second part of your question. Biddable and paid media tends to be actually the best at real-time, because biddable media comes from the real-time bidding kind of space, where the output channel is very much real-time response to different kind of customer interactions. So I think the privacy side does not have a huge impact on the real-timeness of it, but it is good to consider the full flow from when does my data come in, how quickly can I make decisions, and then how quickly can I activate, before you talk about really saying this is a real-time kind of thing. Because if any of those steps is not, then really your end result is not real-time.
No.
Yeah, I would just add to that, I think if we can make a note to send this person a link to that webinar, I think that'd be very useful, Kalina.
Yeah, definitely. It was a really in-depth session about the privacy and reinforcement of iOS ATT. All right. With this, I think we need to wrap up. Again, if there were questions that we couldn't answer live during today's webinar, we're gonna get back to you and answer them personally. Before we go, keep a watch out on your email, because in the coming days we're gonna send the recording with the slides, and also we're gonna attach a little giveaway, one of our latest ebooks, which is all about evaluating CDPs. And if you're in this phase, it will really help you with some practical tips on how to go about this process. So yeah, with this, I think we can close today's session. Thanks everyone for spending this hour with us today. And I would like to thank Thomas and Anthony for your time and shared expertise. Thank you so much. And hopefully till the next time. Have a nice day.